Okay, we got about 10, 15 minutes for class. The Amish, when they rode my yard the last time, I asked the Amish who it was, and they told me the two Mexicans and the big guy. Not you. They thought they had gotten away with something, but my Amish neighbor knew exactly. You know, it's the two Mexicans and the big guy. So it was easy. And I'll get them back one of these times. All right. What? He don't live at your house anymore? I plan on catching his truck up here and jacking up on blocks and taking his wheels off and sliding them back under and setting the truck back down. Oh, Jared and I did that to, who's that thing? Preston. Preston was our summer intern one time, and we did that to Preston. Oh, it made him so mad. Oh, he's mad. Who in the world would do this? He didn't think that was fun at all. But he was living with me, so he could stay up and stay out. It didn't take him long. All right, today we're talking about 2 Samuel. Last week y'all did no, we're not doing 2 Samuel. We're doing 1 Samuel chapter 25. If you want to be turning there. Last week you did chapter 24. I referred to that when I was the youth minister as the poop chapter. And it got their attention, and that's where the poop chapter, that's where King David goes into the cave, relieves himself, and then they're looking for something, so they actually paid attention during that class anyway. Okay, today we're talking about David. He was selected by God. He's going to become king. The class I kind of get my notes off of says that David's going to be the second king of Israel. He's actually the third, if you don't count Ishbosheth. Ishbosheth was King Saul's son, and he's king for 2 years of the northern part, but David was anointed king, and Judah recognized him as the second king, so Ishbosheth kind of just falls by the wayside. Okay, when? Around 1050 BC is when this is talking about. We're going to put, let's start with that one then. I don't know how well you can see that. I guess I could turn this one around. But during this study, I'm 65 years old. Will that go all the way around? Might get a little closer. Can you see? Maybe a little. And I have always heard the term from Dan to Beersheba. Dan to Beersheba. Dan's the northernmost town. Damascus is a little bit northern, a little more north. And then Beersheba is about the last town in the southern region. But I always thought that Dan, the tribe of Dan, was in the north. But see, Greg, that's a different map than the one I had. Dan is up there, but just put my other map up, which actually surprised me because that's where I thought Dan was, the tribe. But the city of Dan is in like Naphtali. The tribe of Dan. Do you have that other map? It's a black and white one. It has the tribe of Dan. All right, can you see Benjamin on this one?
What color is
Benjamin is yellow. Benjamin's yellow right there. And Jerusalem is in Benjamin. And I always thought Jerusalem was in Judah. I don't know where he put it. But the tribe of Dan, on the updated maps, show that the tribe of Dan is adjacent to Benjamin. It's on their 1 Samuel 25 map. Anyway, that was a shocker to me anyway, that if Dan was, all right, if y'all got those maps that I handed out the last time I did, if you got one of those in your book, you got Benjamin and Dan. Benjamin's the yellow one going across, and then it says that on this one's got Dan going around the edge of Ephraim over to the Mediterranean Sea. Which, is yours got Dan down there? All right, is that the city or the tribe? Yeah, yeah, they've got a map back there. No, they had a map when we first started looking this morning that had Dan just to the east of Benjamin. And I always thought Jerusalem was in Judah, the tribe of Judah, but it was not. It's in Benjamin. And then I always thought the tribe of Dan was up north in the city of Dan. Which I guess just really surprised me. All right, the other characters that we're talking about today is Nabal. Nabal, who is a rich man, had a disagreement with David, described as harsh and badly behaved. And then the third character is Abigail. So I guess today's the first day that we don't have King Saul in our study. Where's Marty? Marty here? In here? And I'll tell you. Marty just gave Michelle down the road last week. I watched his class online last night, or I tried to. He put me to sleep, so which was about 11 o'clock anyway. So I had to, when I'd wake up at midnight, I'd start it over and I'd watch him again. But he mentioned Gad was one of the first times we've had Gad come up in 1 Samuel. And anybody know who Gad was? Gad was one of the prophets to David. David had 5 prophets that led him as he goes to be king. Oh, he's not yet king yet, but he had Gad, Samuel, Nathan, Iddo, and the last one starts with an H. Anyway, we'll come across them. Some of them are listed in 1st and 2nd Samuel, which we have Samuel's books that are written. We have parts of Nathan's book that's been found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Jewish priest who had at the university over there that's been assembling the pictures of the fragments said that there was an entire scroll of the book of Nathan, but it was sold when they sold the first scroll of Isaiah. And Isaiah is a complete scroll. It's exactly word for word as Isaiah is in our Bible, but we don't know what Nathan is yet. We've got some small fragments of it. The book of Gad was found, and then after the book of Gad was found, they found an entire copy of it in the country India library, that and Enoch, the book of Enoch. So I've been listening to the book of Gad, and I'll just share this story with you out of the book of Gad, since y'all talked about him last week. And see if this story sounds familiar to you. A Jewish man was traveling down the road, lost his money pouch. When he entered Jerusalem, he could not find his money pouch, so he tacked a note on the city gate stating that he had lost his pouch with 2,000 denarii in it. He offered a reward of 1,000 denarii. A gentleman found a pouch and returned it to the man and waited for his reward of 1,000 denarii. But the pouch that he found only had 2,000 denarii in it. The Jewish man refused to give him his reward, stating that his pouch had 3,000 denarii in it and that he just put 2,000 on the note, and he accused the man of already taking 1,000 denarii. And they got in such a heated argument that they took both these men to King David, and they both told their stories to the king. The king had them each swear. He said the king had the finder of the pouch swear that he only found 2,000 denarii in the pouch, and he swore that he did. The king asked the owner of the pouch, the lost pouch, to swear that he had lost 3,000 and not 2,000. And he swore to that. Then the king had his servant give the pouch with 2,000 denarii to the finder of the pouch, stating that this was obviously not the pouch of the man who lost the pouch of 3,000 by the Jewish man, and he instructed him to continue to look for his pouch of 3,000 denarii. And the people of the city thought that that was a wise saying for King David. Now, it reminded me of the story of Solomon trying to cut the baby in half. So I just thought y'all might like hearing one story out of the book of Gad anyway. That's pretty cool. All right, when you start off in Samuel, 1 Samuel, the prophet Samuel the seer, verse 1. Now Samuel died, and all Israel assembled and mourned for him, and they buried him at his home in Ramah. How would you like that to be all they had to say about you and your death? The rest of this chapter goes on to something else. Samuel was a wise man. We did plays on it here last year before, about Samuel being the last judge. We started off with Hannah and having the baby boy born, and Samuel chapter 1, you have his history, the family history, Elkanah and Hannah, his mom, Peninnah, his siblings, and how they mistreated Hannah. And there's a whole lot that goes into the book of Samuel. That is, upon his death, one verse.
All the rest of his life is recorded.
And then the question is, who wrote the rest of this book of 1 Samuel and the whole book of 2 Samuel? And I think that's where we get into Gad, Iddo, Shemaiah, and the other one.
Might be a guy that was on site, first-hand experience, by the name of David.
Could be. David could have written it. Could have finished it out for him. Okay, but then the main part of this chapter goes to David's dispute with Nabal. Okay, now that's the map that I was hoping for, the one that you had on your tablet, had it in color, and you can see Benjamin and then Dan over on the far left side. Dan is just a little darker than the Benjamin on this side where Jerusalem is. And our story takes place in Maon, which is right here. Maon. And then the cave of En-Gedi was where chapter 24 was, and Elah is where David is circling, kind of around those mountains, caves, around the Jordan River, the Dead Sea, and then where he's doing his battles is over here around the Philistine area of Gaza, the Gaza Strip, which is where Hamas is today. Not much left of Hamas, is there? And you've probably got these maps in the back of your Bible. Okay. Let me just go paper. I don't have time to read the whole chapter, but it's a great story. David's dispute with Nabal starts in verse 1b down through 13. David and his men kept Nabal's shepherds and his sheep safe while they're in and around that area. Nabal is from Maon, but all his sheep are up in Ramah being sheared. And Ramah in that map is in Benjamin, about 10 miles north of Jerusalem. But as you can see it there, just go by my word, in that dark spot to the right is Ramah. So that's where they are. That's where David is currently. In chapter 22 that you did a couple of weeks ago, said David had 400 men. Chapter 24 says that David had 600 men. And says Saul went out to hunt down David in chapter 24, and he's got 3,000 men. I don't know if that was pointed out to you, not that David's army is growing, and it takes quite a bit to feed an army. So he thought, well, since my men have protected and taken care of Nabal's sheep, maybe he'll be generous and give us several to feed our men. But Nabal's doesn't have a giving heart. He's not real fond of David, evidently. He's a very rich man. He's got 3,000 sheep. You think he'd be okay with letting 10 or less go? 1,000 goats. And David's men did protect them while they were out in the wilderness. But now they've gone to shear the sheep, and David sent messengers to him and asked if he would show them generosity because it was a special feast day, and they wanted to participate in the rituals outlined in Leviticus. So Nabal responded by insulting and refusing David's request. Well, David's a man after God's own heart, but David becomes very, very angry, strapped on his sword, told his men to strap on theirs, and here they go after Nabal. He's only taken 4 of his 600 men. 200 stay back to take care of their encampment. And he's headed to Nabal's house. Abigail, Nabal's wife, hears about what happened and what's about to happen. She finds out that David's on his way, so she hurriedly cooks up 200 loaves of bread. She gets 2 skins of wine. She gathers 5 sheep, 5 sheets of grain, 100 clusters of raisins, 200 fig cakes, and loaded them into backpacks on the donkeys, and she heads out to meet David's army. She bowed down to David when she met him and apologized for her worthless husband. He was an alcoholic, a drunk, and she didn't like the way he acted sometimes, so she apologized. David accepted her apology and her gift, and he blessed her. One thing that we know about Abigail is that she was kind, generous, and the Bible says she was beautiful. She was nothing like Nabal. She was a very discerning woman. Now, the last part of this chapter, 30 verses 36 through 44, says that after she saved her family, Abigail found Nabal drunk and feasting, and she was going to tell him what she did, but since he was drunk and partying it up, she said she'd wait till in the morning. And when she told him that, his heart died within him, is what the Bible says. And 10 days later, God takes Nabal's life. God struck Nabal dead. And after her husband's death, and David hears about it, David takes Abigail to be his wife. And David also took a woman named Ahinoam to be his wife. And y'all, who is David's other wife, his first wife? There you go. Somebody knows, and I'm glad for that one. Now, who was Micah? Saul's daughter, okay? And the next couple of chapters, I want you to remember her, because David's going to win a battle. He's going to come into town, and he's going to be dancing, and he's going to start stripping off clothes left and right. And she is going to she's going to see him out her window, and she's going to, maybe not curse him, but she is going to let him have the biggest tongue lashing he's ever had. And he don't have relations with her anymore. Later in life, she's given to, or Saul gives her to another man. David winds up going and taking her back. And then she's going to adopt her 5 grandchildren, 5 nephews. And you're going to read about that story closer to the end of 2 Samuel. But know that this Micah is Saul's daughter, and lots of things are going to happen with her toward the end of David's life. In fact, these are the 5, David's going to give these 5 Well, I'll just let that be a surprise to you. He's going to give her children away. Okay, so what can you learn from this story in 1 Samuel chapter 25? Wish we could read it because I just like stories like this.
Be aware, you never know when you might be talking to an angel, in the case of Nabal with regards to the young man.
True. His legacy is not one you want to repeat. I guess when we can help others and we can afford it, help others. You don't want to be a worthless drunk that doesn't know how to help someone. And by being such, that God took his life because he refused to be that type of person. Men, take care of your wives. Don't have them cleaning up all your mistakes. Men should be role models in their family, leaders in their homes, Christ-like in their affairs, Christ-like in their character. Nabal's fate makes it clear what God thinks of worthless men. Only other story. Do y'all know any other stories where God took someone's life? I know that he took Judah's 2 sons, Tamar's, and Tamar's husband died. Judah. Well, I guess I remember all that story, but because they wouldn't get her pregnant and continue the family line, God took their lives.
Who took David's son? Who took David's son?
Absalom? Oh, yeah, he did take, not Absalom, he took Bathsheba's child. Yeah, or he died. He didn't make it.
Sodom and Gomorrah.
He took all of them, didn't he? And so, Diane, the last time I studied that, there were 4 towns. You know, you think of just Sodom and Gomorrah, but there were actually 4 towns that...
I'm talking about 2. He was going to one of them for his friend.
There's 4 towns that he destroyed with fire and brimstone. So,
He spared 2. Didn't he spare 2? He was going to do 4. And Lot talked him out of going to do 1. That was where he was going to go. And then he spared those 2 he just destroyed. I'm probably wrong.
I think, the way I remember it, I think he destroyed 4 cities, and then he left to the region of Zor, and they did not let him come into town because they had heard about that he was the only one that survived, the only man that survived Sodom or Gomorrah, whichever one he lived in. All right, other thing on the far right, I want y'all to Ammon and Moab. I've taught you that part before. Who were those people? Since we're talking about Lot and his daughters. Ammon was when Lot and his daughters could not go into a town and they could not find a mate, a male, any man to have them, then they got their father drunk, Lot, and they had children by Lot. One was Ammon, the other daughter's son was Moab. And that's why God says no Moabite or Ammonite can ever enter the temple of God. And then a lot of times when you hear wars against the Israelites, you'll hear your the Ammonites, the Moabites, and the Edomites, which is Esau, Moab, and Ammon. Quick lesson when you don't read it all. I don't have any more unless y'all do. Questions? Comments? I hope to read some more on about Nathan and some other things that they're finding in the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're fascinating. And, what Kurt, his last slide, last lesson says that he put up last week, talked about prophecies and how important they were, and that you're foolish if we don't study them. So I like that. Luke 24, I think is what it was. All right, I'm through. Thank y'all for paying attention.